The king of Bhutan reached out a year ago and invited us to come to Geleffu in the south of Bhutan on the border to India and think with him about making an entirely new administrative zone that could be attractive for the younger generations of the Bhutanese and the Indians and the surroundings to settle, but based on the principles of Bhutan. Bhutan is an incredible country because nature is preserved. 70% of Bhutan is covered by forest. It sequesters twice as much carbon as it emits. It's defined by these river valleys that run through the Himalayas. And you have agriculture and living integrated. It's also a country where the history is still very much alive. The kind of beautiful dzongs and the kind of arts and craft is still being built today the way it was 400 years ago. And that also means that you have a visual urban environment where color and craft is omnipresent, which makes it one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And it's also a place where spirituality is everywhere. And I loved Sadhguru's definition of spirituality as seeking. So essentially, everywhere you go, spirituality and celebration and sharing of wisdom is part of the practice. And they've taken all of the principles of Vajrayana Buddhism and baked it in to the 9 parameters of the Gross National Happiness Index, measuring their success as a nation by happiness rather than economic output. So we thought for the Mindfulness City, we would take the 9 measures of national happiness and use them to define the programs of the city, and also translate them into design principles for the sort of urban design of the city. So imagine the Mindfulness City as a place where nature is enhanced rather than displaced by the city, where agriculture is integrated into the urban environment, and where the tradition is still very much alive and celebrated even in the contemporary architecture. So the place Geleffu will sit on is more than 1,000 square kilometers. It's 2 natural reserves bridged by an ecological corridor where tigers can migrate in the highlands and where elephants migrate from India to, like from the Himalayas to India. So the rivers really characterize the landscape and the scenery, and you have people living among the rice fields. So we developed a principle where the city essentially sits between the highlands and the border to India. We create these ecological corridors that allow the elephants to migrate through the city unencumbered, connecting from the Himalayas to India. We also have a gravitational watershed, so that we get almost like these kind of major city parks and then like neighborhood parks along the smaller streams. And then the neighborhoods become almost like rice fields, like little terraces that cascade down the Himalayan hills. And then the city gets denser and denser the closer you get to India. Then you have essentially a regional corridor that connects to the surrounding major cities and India, a kind of local transportation hub for public transportation, and then a little like community street at the north. And everywhere these transportation corridors cross the rivers, a bridge becomes a major public building, both a connection and a destination. So here you see the airport itself is actually a bridge crossing 3 rivers. And when you move closer, you can see like how the city is really defined by these linear parks that move through it. Also, as a principle, you have 6 stories on the lower levels and up until a single story in the highlands. And that is essentially possible to build entirely with mass timber. It's the greatest natural resource of Bhutan, and it's the most sustainable way to build. So we sort of sat down with the local architects and developed a whole family of building types where we combine the available craft for like a single family, a kind of a multi-generational family, or even a kind of community, which means that when you put these building types together, you actually create this kind of perfect coexistence of old and new. The local streets have permeable pavements so that water can penetrate through, creating a resilient environment. You have the waterfronts of the rivers. When you go higher, you have people living between the rice fields. And finally, in the highlands, you have like very sort of reclusive and sort of possibilities for extreme levels of mindfulness. And then, for instance, the airport, also entirely made out of mass timber and modular, becomes a kind of statement of arriving to this new place. A Vajrayana Buddhist center that is a bridge, so when you cross from one neighborhood to the other, you see spiritual leaders doing their practice as you pass through the bridge. A healthcare bridge that combines Western and Eastern medicine, but also is a passage from one part of the city to another. A university, a young child going to school in the morning can see what the older students are doing and dream about their future. The market, again, a destination on top of the river and a connection between two neighborhoods. And maybe as the last bridge, the entire city will be powered by renewable energy. So we're building a dam. The river basically comes from the Himalayas and it continues into India. So we thought to design the dam as a temple bridge, as a Bhutanese interpretation of the Indian step wells. The entire facade is made accessible, so you can actually walk in 1,000 different pilgrimage routes down the face of the dam to a kind of present day equivalent of the tiger's nest, so that as you visit Bhutan and this region, it somehow consolidates all of the elements of the mindfulness city. It's taking a piece of infrastructure and turning it into spirituality. It's taking a piece of engineering and turning it into art. So maybe and in some way I could see that maybe the temple dam could be for the mindfulness city what the Eiffel Tower is to Paris or the Sydney Opera is to Australia. So maybe just to end, we presented the master plan together with the king at the National Day in Bhutan in December, and we're currently accelerating the work on the dam and on the airport. And maybe just to end, to give you a glimpse of the future of the mindfulness city, we've created a little film that in 3 minutes explains what I did in half an hour.
Bhutan is the Vajrayana Buddhist capital of the world, a special place where wisdom and compassion have forged a unique way of life. Fiercely proud of their traditions, Bhutanese have preserved their cultural values for centuries through a joint effort focused on sharing, teaching, and caring. Their communities thrive on collective well-being, growing a society that measures its nation's success on 9 indicators of happiness. A land of mountains, forests, and rivers, Bhutan is one of the world's last remaining biodiversity hotspots and its first carbon-negative country. After centuries of perfecting a life of harmony with others and nature, Bhutan is now ready to show the world how to create a sustainable human presence on Earth. Descending from the Himalayas to the tropical plains, an uninterrupted flow of water, plants, and animals shape the mindfulness city. Cascading terrace fields become lively neighborhoods nested along naturally connected ecologies. Inhabitable bridges span across biodiversity corridors, connecting communities both physically and spiritually with centers for innovation, education, and recreation. The city may lead you on a journey of discovery to connect with your body, mind, and soul. A home for meditation and a place for togetherness, where knowledge can be shared, taught, and practiced with the world's spiritual leaders. The mindfulness city will join traditional with new, finding a balance that is both respectful and creative. A constellation of public squares provides centers for cultural gatherings and festivities, while a network of social infrastructure supports the community's everyday needs. People of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds will share knowledge and ideas to grow future generations into the leaders of tomorrow. Bhutanese arts will be preserved and traditional craft will expand through handmade and advanced technology. To build a city where engineering is art and nature is power. The Mindfulness City will become a gateway, a bridge between local and global, past and future, nature and humanity. It will be an invitation to the world to participate in the Bhutanese mindset, to learn, to teach, and to share its values towards growing a more sustainable future.
A big round of applause, please, for Bjarke Nagel. Thank you so much for joining us here and teaching us how to develop and urbanize mindfully.